Hey everyone, welcome back to our SwiftUI series, and today we're going to be talking about accessibility. So did you know that over 1 billion people worldwide rely on accessibility features to use digital products efficiently? Yet many apps overlook accessibility, making them difficult or impossible for people with disabilities. In this tutorial, we'll start with a basic SwiftUI app and progressively add accessibility features to elevate the user experience for everyone. We'll showcase Apple's accessibility tools to fix common issues using the Accessibility Inspector. By the end, you'll have an app that not only looks great, but is fully inclusive and accessible. And something I want to shout out to is the developer human guidelines. I will put the link for this in the description, but if you open up Xcode and you go to the very top of your screen, under the help, you can open up the human interface guidelines here or Shift Command H. And I really want to bring attention to the accessibility tab. And this does a really great job about talking about all the different accessibility features and different considerations we might want to include in our app. So why is this important? Well, if we have very tiny text, unlabeled buttons, or low contrast, if we even try to have voiceovers, it might not work. So imagine opening an app but the text is too small to read, the buttons are unlabeled, and your screen reader can't describe what's happening. This is the daily experience for millions of users who rely on accessibility tools. Accessibility isn't just for people with disabilities, it benefits everyone. Whether you're in bright sunlight using one hand or experiencing temporary vision loss from eye strain, accessibility makes apps better and is going to have more users use your application. Let's ensure our SwiftUI apps meet these different standards. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and just create a new project, but if you want to add any of these to your existing application, always feel free to do so. I'm going to call this one accessibility. Gonna make sure our language is on SwiftUI, language Swift, and we go ahead and dive on in. So I'm just gonna start off with a very simple UI. I'm gonna create a couple state private variables here, and let's make a task app. So we'll create an array of tasks, maybe buy groceries. Perhaps the other ones are complete SwiftUI tutorials, and call mom. I wonder how she's doing. Actually, I spoke to my mother very recently. Another state private variable. We'll call it new task here, so maybe the users can create their own tasks in our app. We can go ahead and get rid of our VStack and padding, and I'm going to add a navigation stack instead. Add a brace, add some space. We can create a VStack here. And immediately I'm going to also add an HStack. This is going to have a text field. If you want to grab these different things from the object library, feel free to do so. So enter new task. We're just going to create this really quickly, and our text will bind to the new task that we created above. So I'm going to use a $sign there. Let's add some text field style too. And let's have this be rounded border. It's a fun one. Next to that, we're going to add a button here, and we'll just have this say add. Right, we're going to be adding new tasks with this. So if new task dot is empty, we're using that exclamation point there. So we're saying if it is not empty, let's go ahead and add this thing. Take a look at our task dot append, and then we're going to be adding the new task, and new task is just going to go ahead and equal an empty string afterwards, so we can clear the space afterwards. Pretty standard stuff for a button adding to a new list. You can also add a button style here. So after button braces dot button style, order prominent. Oh, let's add some padding. And let's go ahead and add a list here, and we're going to have a for each. I'm gonna grab our task and have the ID be the /self, and then we'll go ahead and add a brace and say task in, and let's display the text of the tasks, which is a very simple UI. We'll even add a dot on delete. I'm not going to use the autofill because I'm going to add my brace instead. We'll do index set in tasks dot remove our bracket at offset index set. Okay, pretty standard stuff, nothing too crazy. Oh, sorry, it's task singular. There we go. And we can just add a navigation title while we're here. Navigation title. Let's call it my to-do list. Okay, so a pretty standard UI, nothing too crazy, and we can run the app. It's fully functional. We can even add a new task here. So maybe it's walk dog. We can add it. We can see add to the list. We can also delete these, right? This is a super basic but functional task app, right? There's many other things we can do, such as adding Swift data. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and run our app in the simulator. And we need to do this because we're going to be using the accessibility inspector built into Xcode and on your Mac. So as this is kind of booting up here, what we can do is we can click back on Xcode, we can go to the top left, and we can go to Open Developer Tool. And you'll see that we have, the simulator instruments, and we even have the accessibility inspector. So this is where we're going to be able to access different accessibility and test our app for any potential issues. So initially it's going to have, your Mac. Mine's just my name with my MacBook Air. If we go ahead and click on this, we can now go to the simulator and we see that we have different processes. So now that we're running our accessibility helper, I'm going to select this under the processes. So we can see that we have it up on our screen here. And there's a lot of different cool features that you can do with this. If you have the targeting mode selected, so you can see it's highlighted with blue, you can kind of hover over the elements and you can even see the inspected element. So here it's the My To-Do List header. This is enter new task. It says add button. So this is how the screen readers are able to see your application. So this is how we can inspect the different elements. I'm going to go ahead and click this so we can toggle it off. And we can even press the play button here. We go to the next one.
Add button. Buy groceries. Complete SwiftUI tutorials. Call mom. My to-do list. Header. Enter new.
We don't need to go through everything again, but this allows us to, really ensure that people with screen readers are able to use our application. So the current thing that's wrong is the add button is unclear to VoiceOver users. The list items don't describe actions available, such as, that the users are able to delete them. And there's no VoiceOver feedback when we're currently adding the tasks. So let's fix these issues with the SwiftUI accessibility modifiers. So in our button here, we can go ahead and just minimize this, or we can close it and reopen it later. So in our add button here, what we can do is under the button style, we can add a .accessibility label. So we can go ahead and search for that in our autocomplete. And from here, we can add some text, and we're going to call this one add new task. So now our VoiceOver should announce this clearly, right? Because if we just have it say add, well, what are we adding? Are we adding someone's name? We're now being very specific that we're adding a new task. Next in our for each tasks, let's add an accessibility hint to describe actions. So under the text of task, right, we're actually not doing this on the .onDelete. We're going to say, okay, I want users to be able to know if they're using a screen reader, they can swipe left to delete. So we're going to do .accessibility hint. So let's see if we can scroll down here. We're going to select the one with the hint, and we can include a string within here, and we're going to say swipe left to delete. So this is going to inform the VoiceOver users that they can now swipe left on these things to delete them. We can even include some feedback on the text field. And in the case of the new value of the text field, so under our style, we'll do .accessibility value. And we're going to choose the one with the value description. And we're just going to basically have the new task be put within here. And this is going to allow us to read what the user has typed. Wonderful. Let's also add an option to notify users when a task is added. So let's go back to our button here where we have the new task right before we're clearing it, because we want to make sure that it reads the new task before it's cleared. We can add a UI accessibility .post, and we're going to use the notification argument. So for the notification, we're going to set this to be an announcement. This is going to be an announcement for an assistive app. And for the argument, we're going to include a string here, and we're going to say task added. And let's go ahead and interpolate that task that the user has added. So let's say new task. So now it's going to announce to those users what they've added. So if they've added walk the dog, or buy corn at the store or whatever it is, that they'll be able to hear what they've added. So let's go ahead and test our app again. We can stop the process and we can start it once more. I'm gonna go ahead and click on Xcode real quick. Let's open up that developer tool. Like I said, I have mine pinned to my taskbar because I use it quite often. And let's go ahead and select our simulator once more and our accessibility helper 101 in the case of having what the user has typed. So I'll do walk the puppy, right? Let's go ahead and use our target inspector.
Description for element unavailable.
We could also kind of have this voiceover option selected.
Might walk the puppy.
Right, and so now that we've hovered over it, it's saying walk the puppy. We also changed our button.
Add new task button.
Right, so now we know this is the button that they use to add new tasks.
Buy groceries. Swipe left to delete. Complete SwiftUI tutorials. Swipe left to delete.
Wonderful. Now we can support people who are using those screen readers, and the voiceover is more descriptive. So I want to talk about some best practices for real world apps. If you're applying this to your application, make accessibility a priority from the start. Don't wait to the end to add accessibility, bake it into your design process. Use Apple's accessibility guidelines. That's what we're talking about at the very start. In the case of the accessibility here, you can scroll down. There's some best practices. Even on the right here, when we're talking about voiceover, which is what we really focused on today, there's a whole lot other ones like text display, making sure that your text is readable, color and effects. If you want to know how to access the color and make sure that it's applicable, if we go back to our accessibility inspector, what I like to do is I like to select this kind of middle option in the top right. It's called Audit. And from here, we can run an audit on our application. So we can see that we do have some current issues. And the current issues within our application here are the dynamic font size, or the dynamic font sizes are unsupported. We can even click on these elements here. We can see, this one says call mom. And this is because when we were adding text into our list, we haven't given it a text property that is dynamic, right? Normally when we add things like text, we'll add a property. So in the case of our list here, we can even adjust everything within our list, or under the text, we can do dot font, right? And we can add it to be like title or header or caption, right? So if we just did like a dot body, this is something that's dynamic type. Another cool thing you can do is on the third tab, you see we have the settings, and this is where the dynamic type comes in. So we pop open our simulator again, we should be able to adjust these kind of sliders to see how our SwiftUI app will handle with these different sizes. Because we're just using the default text, you can see that this is popping off the screen. If you are using things like the dot font with those different properties, you should be good to go. You can even see how it looks when it's bolded, right? These are the different accessibility features people can use on their iPhones. Another big one people have issues with is the color. If we go back to our accessibility here, you can see that some font is a little bit hard to read. You can even select the color on the left side here to learn a little bit more about how you can best use color within your application. That is something that the audit is also going to report. If you're unsure about how to add different accessibility features, don't worry. Just like with other UI elements, Xcode's got you covered in the object library. If we go to the modifiers here, we have control. We can scroll down for just a little bit here. And you can get to the accessibility tab about 2/3 of the way down on my end. And you can see we have the accessibility actions, we have the hints, the identifiers, right? So you can even drag and drop these into your code, or you can open them with the developer documentation. These are all here for you to use and implement within your application to make it as accessible as possible. Make sure you're using the color contrast and dynamic type. So that's the dot foreground color that adapts to dark and light mode. And you can enable dynamic type with the font dot body that we had just talked about instead of fixed sizes. And make sure you test with real users. Accessibility Inspector helps, but real users will provide the best feedback. So today we made buttons, lists, and text fields fully accessible. We used VoiceOver to improve navigation and feedback, and we validated our app with the We validated our app with the accessibility inspector. So some next steps would be add custom voiceover actions for interactive gestures, implement haptic feedback for non-visual feedback cues, support color blindness modes with SwiftUI's environmental properties, and like and subscribe for more SwiftUI tutorials. And let me know in the comments below what accessibility features you're including within your app. Remember, dream big, code bigger, and we'll see you in the next one.